Then Paul came eventually and provided me comfort and assurance when I needed it. Anyway, Colossians chapter 3. Now, we're getting ready, my family's getting ready to go on a road trip, and without interruption, it takes about 10 hours. So keep that hand up, Jackie, Cindy, she's coming. The trip is going to take about 10 hours one way, driving. But I have 4 kids that are 16, 13, 11, and 8. How many of you think I'm going to make those 10 hours without stopping? In fact, we split it up over 2 days just because of that, and they probably add maybe about an extra 5 hours to that journey just for multiple different reasons. And whether you have kids or you were a kid, and everybody here was a kid at some point, if you've taken a road trip with children or as a child, there is a common question that is often asked on a road trip. What is it? Are we there yet? Okay, because we don't like waiting for something. We want to get there. And today there's a little bit of ease in being able to kind of keep the kids distracted from that with various devices and stuff. But even then, we still get the "Are we there yet?" questions that happen because I don't want to wait for things. What good is that? I don't want to wait for things. If it's good, give it to me now, right? We don't like waiting. And that's not just children, because you know that when you pull onto a road to go somewhere and then you realize like you're pulling up onto the parkway and then you realize it's too late. You're there in the midst of traffic and you can't turn around. Although, have you ever seen the guys that will turn around and go opposite, wrong way back up the ramp to get out of there? But you realize you're stuck, and when that happens, you're just so happy about life at that moment, right? No, we're not happy at that moment. Why? Because we don't like waiting. We just wanted to get from point A to point B. When you go to the grocery store or any store and you walk in and you just want to go in there, and I don't know, there's some people that like to go into stores and like just kind of wander around. Okay? There's only one store I like to do that in, and that's the bookstore pretty much. But any other store, I just want to get in, get out. And so you go in for your mission and you get there and there's lines. And once again, you just want to do a dance because you're so excited and happy about the opportunity to wait, right? Or we're irritated and upset because I didn't want to have to wait through this, because we want what we want and we want it now, right? And that reality poses a problem for us as followers of Christ, and it poses a problem for us trying to communicate Christ to others, because the Christian message has a problem. Now, don't take that the wrong way. Not that the Christian message is wrong, but there is a challenge between the Christian message, the gospel message being communicated to people, and people being able to receive it. And the problem is, there's a lot of waiting when you're a Christian. Did you know that? There's a lot of waiting when you're following Christ. And some of the waiting takes years, decades, might even take until after we die, waiting. And we can't even stomach waiting 5 minutes. I mean, are you ever watching something and you have to deal with a 30-second commercial? We just want to throw the thing because we don't wait 30 seconds to play our game or watch something, right? Because we don't like to wait 30 seconds, let alone a lifetime. So how are we going to persuade people to choose to follow Jesus when their problems aren't going to be resolved in 30 seconds? How are we going to convince people to continue to follow Jesus and do the things that Jesus wants them to do when their problems aren't going to be resolved in a day? When all the things that they desire aren't going to come to fulfillment in a week? There's a delay. How do we deal with the delay? How do we deal with that? And not only do we need to figure out how to communicate that, but there's all kinds of false impressions or just misleading impressions in the midst of it. We have people out there that are promising that if you follow Jesus, which I was joking about that concept earlier before the service began. I know one way that I can get more people in this sanctuary. You know how I can do that? I can lie to you guys. And I can tell you, if you come to church every week, God's going to heal all of your physical health issues, and God's going to take care of all your financial burdens, and God's going to make sure all your relationship things are peaceful and harmonious and fulfilling. All you have to do is come to church every week. And then when you come to church and those things aren't getting fulfilled, then I'll just let you know, you just haven't figured out how to have the right kind of faith yet. And if you figure that out, you just keep coming here and figure that out, and all your problems are going to go away. And people want to hear that message, don't they? That's why people fall for scammers. That's why people fall for different things, because we desperately want it to be true that immediately all our problems are going to go away and all our desires are going to be fulfilled.
That's true.
And sometimes that does happen. Not all of them, but sometimes that does happen. But the reality is, if we're going to follow Jesus, there's going to be a lot of waiting. And not only is there going to be a lot of waiting, but there's going to be a lot of imperfections. Anybody like me, you're a perfectionist. You just like everything to be a certain way. And it's driving me nuts that it's not all a certain way. Okay? Like, sometimes I have a hard time preaching if I come in the morning and everything's not the way it's supposed to be. And I mean, everything's not the way it's supposed to be. Like, just one object is not in its right place. There's something wrong with me. God help me. But I don't like things to not be the way it's supposed to be. And as much as I might have more of a problem than you do, you have this problem also. Because we know it that when we get frustrated with things, we're usually frustrated with things because this isn't the way it's supposed to be. I'm not supposed to feel like this. I'm not supposed to have this hurdle. This isn't supposed to be as difficult as it is. This problem shouldn't be here. And even though we know theologically that there's going to be problems, and we get that, in the moment when the problem is there, we don't care about theology. We just don't want this problem to be there. And that is the unfortunate reality of following Christ. Is that if we are going to follow Christ, we're going to be waiting, and we're going to have to deal with all kinds of imperfections. And if I am going to be faithful to follow Christ, I'm going to have to figure out how to handle that. If I'm going to convince somebody else to follow Christ, I'm going to have to help them be okay with that. Can you be okay with that? Can you be okay with a life that's not fully satisfactory, with a life that's painful, with a life filled with waiting? Can you be okay with that? With a life of not seeing the fulfillment of the things that you are pursuing, and yet still follow Christ? Part of the false impression is that the Scripture unintentionally gives us the false impression. Because doesn't the Bible promise better things? Doesn't the Bible talk about peace and comfort and joy and fulfillment? Amen. And so the Bible gives this impression that, and again, it's not the Bible that's the problem, though. It's our interpretation and application of it. But it gives this impression that everything's going to be okay. And that is true, but our definition of everything's going to be okay is no problems, and whatever problems there are, fix it now. When you get frustrated with prayer, that's really what it is, isn't it? Is the thing that you're asking to happen isn't happening yet. That's why we're frustrated. So how do we cope with this? How do we handle this so that, do you want to follow Jesus? Do you want to be faithful to Him? How do we handle this so that we can be faithful to Christ and live for Him and help other people to do the same? Well, we can do that by seeing a few things that are happening or present in our lives. And we need to see these things because this is what's going to help us to make the right choice when we really want to make the wrong choice. Have you ever been in that place where, like, you knew what was the wrong choice, but you just wanted to make that choice? Have you ever had that before? Like, you knew it was the wrong choice, but there is nothing in me that wants to make the right choice. Am I alone in that? And usually when we feel that is when everything's going great, right? No. When everything is falling apart and we're feeling miserable, that's when we want to make the wrong choice. And it's in that moment that we need to see that there is a best path to take and that there are two different paths to choose from. And Colossians 3 talks about, in verse 1, seek the things that are above. Verse 2, set your mind on things that are above. And verse 2 also, not on the things that are on the earth. So there is a wrong path to pursue, and there is a right path to pursue. And we're being told to choose the right path. Now, how do we make sure that we choose the right path? And I want us to know that it's being described as heavenly path and earthly path. But it doesn't mean that if you pursue any sense of earthly pleasure or fulfillment, or if you care about and tend to things that are earthly, that doesn't mean that we're being earthly. Because if we read this passage and we see how Paul describes the earthly position and the heavenly position, it's all about behavior and attitude and outlook towards life. That's the issue. Because we can behave heavenly while being in an earthly context, and that's actually significantly the key. So how do I not go down the wrong path? Well, verse 5 says that the wrong path entails sexual immorality, evil desire, and covetousness, which amounts to idolatry. Now, why are these things idolatry? What do these things have in common with each other? Sexual immorality, evil desire, and covetousness. It's that I want something, and perhaps I shouldn't have it, but I want it. And so when I want something, I'm going to try to get it. Right? When we want something, like if you're really hankering for a donut, not that donuts are sin. I mean, Leviticus says they are, but I'm just kidding. If you're hankering for a donut and you have the money to get a donut and there's access to donuts, what do? You go get a donut, because we often go based on what we want, right? We desire things, and that's how we live. We live based on going after what we desire. That's the earthly mindset. But it's mostly earthly when it gets in the way of me doing what Jesus wants me to do. So if in order for me to fulfill the desire I have to disobey Jesus, and I choose to disobey Jesus to get what I want, that's the earthly mindset.